What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Ben and Walker Movie Show. I'm your co host, Ben Davis, joined by my other esteemed co host, Walker Holt, and we're excited to have a conversation with you about one of our favorite things in the world tough mamas looking out for their babies.
Are we, are we doing Resurrection?
No. That movie isn't real. That movie doesn't exist. At least for my mental health, I like to pretend it doesn't. That and Alien 3. No offense to people who like those movies. They're just not for me. But yeah, yeah. Let's pretend these don't exist. Let's also pretend that this doesn't feel like some sort of what's it called when it happens over and over again, like in the Matrix.
Like a glitch or deja vu or
Deja vu. Yeah, that's
yeah.
what I'm looking for. Yeah, this is totally our first time doing this intro. As always, if this is your first time being here with us today, welcome. We are very glad to have you. But while you're here, please make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with all the latest content we have for you guys, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. You can also give us a follow over on our socials at Ben and Walker Movie Show. So we're on Threads, Instagram, TikTok. We mostly stay to Instagram. We're not as active, but we're there. We're there. And if you want to stay up to date with the latest stuff that we have for you, that's another way to follow. Um, but yeah, just in case I also forget to mention it, comment down below, especially if you're watching on YouTube. That really helps us out a great deal. But let's go ahead and dive into this thing. Like last week, where we discussed Alien in honor of its 45th anniversary, and also because Alien Romulus came out, we decided to continue on with our love for this franchise by discussing James Cameron's Aliens in honor of Alien Romulus, which is currently just celebrating a lot of success, well earned success in theaters. If you aren't familiar with Aliens, the plot synopsis reads like such, according to Google. After floating in space for 57 years, boy, don't we all know what that feels like. Lieutenant Ripley's shuttle is found by a deep space salvage team. Upon arriving on LV 426, the Marines find only one survivor, a 9-year-old girl named Newt. But even these battle hardened Marines, with all the latest weaponry, are no match for hundreds of aliens that have invaded the colony. Walker, you and I have both preached about our love for James Cameron on this show before, but where does this rank for you in terms of James Cameron movies? Keeping in mind those movies are Terminator, Aliens, The Abyss, T2, Titanic, Avatar, and Avatar: The Way of Water.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't speak to this movie really because I do like this movie. It really speaks more to James Cameron and his career, but I mean, it's honestly pretty low. When I do like this movie, but his other work. I mean, I'm gonna put both Terminators above it. I'm gonna put Titanic above it. I'm gonna put Avatar 2 above it. This and Avatar 1 are very close for me, and they'd be above. I haven't seen The Abyss, and I'm really due for a rewatch on True Lies. I do like True Lies, but so I'm gonna put True Lies and The Abyss below it, and the first Avatar's right there with it, and then everything else is above it. But again, I mean, he hits a lot of home runs. It's not a comment on this movie as much as it is a comment on his career.
It's S tier and A tier, and there's nothing below it, in
Sure.
my
Right.
opinion.
Right.
Like it's just S tier and A tier for him. For him, I put uh, Titanic and Terminator 2 is like the
Mm-hmm.
S tier, and then everything else is kind of in A tier, with Avatar: The Way of Water kind of peaking
Mm-hmm.
into the S tier. But this is probably, I would say I would go um T2, or excuse me, Titanic, then T2, um probably Avatar: The Way of Water, Avatar, and then I'd probably go Aliens.
Mm-hmm.
But that, again, that's not to speak to this movie, much like yourself. It's to speak to just the greatness that is his filmography. Um, there's no misses in here. They're all great.
No. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, he's had a hell of a career. Did great work on Entourage too. I know I've been saying that for a year because my wife and I are watching Entourage, and it's taking us forever to finish it, and he just keeps popping back up in it.
Yeah, that's one of those shows that slipped through the cracks for me. Maybe
Yeah, I
I'll.
mean, it's just it's about a guy who's an actor, an up and coming actor,
Oh
and
yeah,
over the story he becomes a movie star. And one of the things that propels him is he gets to do a Jim Cameron movie, which is Aquaman, and
James Cameron's Aquaman.
yeah,
Yeah,
and James Cameron's a pretty good actor. I mean, he shows up, and I mean, that show is littered with cameos of like athletes and producers and directors and just different famous actors, but just a lot of people who aren't actors, and it's painfully obvious that they're not actors sometimes when shows are like
yeah,
that. James Cameron doesn't fit that bill. I mean, he comes in and he actually. He acts like I imagine he acts pretty close to himself, but he might act like an exaggerated version of himself, like just kind of a perfectionist.
like a bigger version of himself.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like maybe like a ruder version of himself, like a but
kind of
he's
like
a good
This Is
actor.
the End, but dialed up a little bit more.
Yeah, sure, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I. So speaking of his acting, he actually is the first voice you hear in this movie. It's him on the VO.
Really,
Mm-hmm.
hmm.
Of one of the salvage people that discover Ripley's
Hmm.
ship.
Cool.
Speaking of James Cameron, he has a history of writing these really well layered female characters. I don't want to say strong female characters because there's a negative connotation that comes with that, which is they're just strong and they're one layered. But he has like a history of writing, strong female characters, but they have layers to them. Um, where does Ellen Ripley rank for you out of all these characters?
Um, it's possible there's recency bias here, but probably number one. I mean, I
Yeah,
think she's number one. I mean, I we spoke on it a lot on the first one, and it's much more obvious on this one because, and we'll talk more about it. But I said last week that um, the cast, the ensemble, the characters in the first one, it was just told interestingly where like it didn't feel like Ellen Ripley was the star of the show. She was just one of the team. I mean, you might have liked her the most and you started to
yeah,
gravitate towards her the most, and maybe she was hit with moral conundrums that she made probably the right decision on a few times that made her a protagonist. But it was an ensemble, group that became that she was the last one standing and became the badass in the end. And then this movie, she's everyone's hero from the first moment, so it's her movie to own, and we get to see a lot more layers, especially when we talk about certain things that happen in the movie, with other characters. When you say layered, it seems very obvious with her. And I mean, the characters in the other movies are also great, and Zoe Saldana comes to mind with Neytiri, and uh, Rose
my
and
favorite character from that franchise.
yeah,
Yeah,
and Rose and Sarah and everybody. I mean, there's a lot of good characters out there, but Ripley stands out to me right now as number one.
yeah, I'm in agreement to you. I think you talk about Ellen Ripley, Sarah Connor, both very iconic female characters, but also you have Zoe Saldana's Natiri. You have Rose from Titanic. You have Jamie Lee Curtis from True Lies. You have the main actress from The Abyss in that role, Mary Elizabeth. Master Antonio, or something like that. I think is the actress's name. But he has a history of creating these incredibly well written female characters, and I think and Ellen Ripley to me stands. Even though he didn't create Ellen Ripley, he adds layers to that character that I think are very. And we'll get into it a little bit more later, but it's the reason she's such a great character, and and again, I'm saying this as a guy. She's shows strength through her femininity, and oftentimes, when other people write female characters, they write them masculine, and it like there's something to it where it doesn't feel as authentic as Ellen Ripley, where Sigourney Weaver brings the strength through her femininity to it. And I think that's why Ellen Ripley to me stands, I don't want to say head and shoulders above the rest, but she's to me my favorite.
Yeah.
I think if you were to ask me when I was younger, it would be Sarah Connor. But now as like an adult, it's like it's Ellen Ripley. I think.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And that's not to take away from any of the other characters or try to pit them against each other. It's just a preference for a director who seems to love writing these very layered female characters.
Yeah.
Getting back to Aliens rather, when did you see this film, and why do you think it's still so iconic to this day and so quotable?
I don't want to be overly repetitive, but it does bear repeating. I mean, the first time I saw it, we spoke last week about it. Felice, someone who used to babysit my cousin and I, showed it to me. She was a big inspiration to me on seeing on movies, loving movies, and I can remember her like sales pitches on movies all the time. Like she would know exactly. I mean, obviously the chest burster scene in the first one, like she would sell me and Andrew, and like this movie's like this happens, then this happens, and she tells us some maybe pivotal, but it doesn't matter because we were 8 years old. But it's not like just some fun part that we're gonna love, and it's like, oh my god, we gotta see that. And then we go watch it, and I can remember her saying Newt a lot, and me not knowing. I don't know. It's such a vague memory, but it's a good memory. It's a vague memory, but it's a good memory, and it So I watched it when I was like 8 or so, and I remember loving it. I mean, it was just an exciting, definitely cool movie to watch. And I don't think I've ever watched the first one without watching the second one afterwards. Just watching them back to back as like a feature. And I've had a couple. I'm in the middle of a rewatch right now of all the movies. I've got about 35 minutes of Prometheus left. But I watched the original 4 already. In terms of iconic, I mean, it's great, but I think that extra nudge is it just never happened. Like, I mean, it does happen, but to have a Alien and Aliens, both be so different tonally by two iconic directors, and both be arguably equally as good. I mean, I imagine a lot of people think one is better than the other, and then a lot of people think the other is better than the, I mean, and no one would blame anyone for having a preference between the two. But I mean, for lightning to strike in a bottle, twice for these movies and in such different ways, but like it doesn't like bother anybody that they're different. They're just different and good, and it really tonally like works for the story too to be different. Like just because there's so much more of a mystery of an unknown in the first one to like a more of a plan of attack in the second one kind of thing that lends better to an action movie versus the horror. I just think it's such a unique situation, and the titles probably. I can't tell if I love the titles or hate the fact that they just added the S. I mean, it's part of me like thinks it's like perfectly. I don't know, 80s or something. Well, and
the legend is that I mentioned this on our Alien episode that James Cameron walked into the pitch for this and wrote Aliens or Alien on the chalkboard or on a dry erase board, and then wrote an S with dollar signs through it.
Yeah, that's funny.
The urban legend. I don't know if that's true or not.
But yeah, I think that, I mean, I don't want to, all that is just extra layers on top that, it's not easy to become iconic. There's a lot of great movies out there, and not a lot of iconic movies. They're not, great movie doesn't mean iconic. And
no.
so this just had, I think those layers on top of it, and it was ahead of its time. I mean, Alien, you know, sometimes it's hard to like remember you're sitting in a theater seat 45 years ago. I mean, it was impressive.
We weren't around 45 years ago, or probably even thought of. It's
Right.
just
Sure.
like it's. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head here, which is where you have these two very distinct films made by very strong, distinct voices, but are both they're both so different, but they're not in competition with each other. They're both very flowing, and it feels very fluid for the franchise to move into this direction that it goes into, because James Cameron took the first movie, honored it, and built on top of it. He didn't try to go back and, well, I got to redo Alien again. That's kind of me taking a shot at Alien 3. But like, he didn't feel the need to go do that. He just felt the need to expand the franchise in a different direction while still maintaining what the first one did. And I personally think, and this will go into the next question, he made it more. The first one is a haunted house movie. Yes, there's a lot of, thematic elements that you can cling to, but this one has much more emotional stakes to it.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes it much more emotional. And that's what it helps build on top of that first one. And it makes this 1-2 punch of a movie phenomenal. It really does.
Mm-hmm.
It He's kind of the master, James Cameron, of the sequel. You know, Aliens, Terminator 2, Avatar: The Way of Water. Can you name
Sure.
better
It's
sequels?
right.
It's
Yeah. I mean, and like
really
it's rare. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely rare. I mean, and certainly not by the same creator. I
no.
mean, but when you got, I mean, like when you throw, I don't know, did we ever rank our top sequels back in the day when we were doing the games? I know we did prequels at one point, but like
I don't know. I have to go back and look.
it's interesting. I mean, obviously you got Extremely Goofy Movie, you got Simba's Pride, you got Enchanted Christmas, you got Grease 2. Those are all solid. I mean, oh, and Godfather too, I guess. But
Empire Strikes Back,
yeah, yeah. No,
Star
I
Wars:
mean,
The Last
especially from
Jedi.
one guy, it's nuts.
We just lost half the people when I said Star Wars: The Last Jedi. But no, yeah, it's nuts, and I think you got memorable characters. You have incredibly memorable lines, memorable set pieces, but they all mean something. It's not just spectacle. Again, going to the emotional stakes and emotional core of this movie, on top of still carrying over the thematics of the first movie, but adding to it with much more character focused thematic elements, which is what I think carries it into my next question is, saving the best for last. Having watched Aliens now, what do you think of it? And also, do you prefer this movie to Alien?
So I think it's great. I agree with everything you've said. I think it makes this 1-2 punch excellent. I think it's a great standalone, but paired with the original, it's I mean it's excellent. Um, they're very close. I I pretty much came down to me just having to pick. You'll see my score. My score on this is 1 point lower than the original. They're very very close. I mean they basically I like them equally. I took one aspect of this that I had less fun with and was like, well, that's the docking point. I knock it down a point and it just to have a preference, just to kind of assign one to be ranked higher than the other. So I did pick the original to be higher, but just by 1 point. How about you?
Wow. Uh, to me, it is. I think they're both great. I do,
Mm-hmm.
but I prefer this one. It's not really much of a conversation for me. The reason being is because the first one, again, watching it for this episode that we're recording, like it it just we watched the extended cut, the special edition that came out in 1990. That was the original intention to come out, which is where they add the subplot back of Ellen Ripley having a daughter, which is incredibly important. I don't know why they cut that out of the
Oh,
theatrical.
that was the difference. Like the
That's the difference in the mini gun sequence, and there's a couple other things too.
why did they cut that
Um,
out?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's still there. The thematic elements are there, but that little detail, that little scene adds so much more to this movie because, again, the first one to me, it is a great slasher flick. It really is.
Mhm.
It's a great science fiction film with a lot of, you know, thematic elements that we dove into last week when we talked about Alien. But this, again, not to be repetitive, it adds to that by being a film about really, it's more character focused on Ellen Ripley by giving her this. It's the second chance of being a mom.
Mhm.
There's much more emotional stakes to it there, where this alien creature, because of what happened in that first movie, she lost her daughter. She didn't actually get to go back home and make it to her daughter for her 11th birthday. And when she sees Newt, it's a second chance of being a mom, but it's also a chance of redemption in her eyes. Um, but it's also a second chance at vengeance at the end of this movie, where she gets to just go off on these aliens that robbed her of being a mom and robbed her of her daughter and of her life. And it's that emotional aspect of this movie and her going down, like literally going and descending on into hell to get her surrogate daughter back and to enact vengeance on these people. She goes through an actual character arc, and in the first movie, she doesn't have much of an arc. Like,
I
it's
agree.
there, but it's not like it is here, where it's much more character driven and there's much more emotional stakes on top of the thematic stakes. And that's why I have this better than the first
Yeah,
movie.
and what's also funny to me is we talk tonally, and I think typically when we or anyone is talking about these movies as really the tonal differences. I mean, I think the easiest thing to say is like this one horror, this one action, or whatever. But like
Yeah.
there's a lot more with character too, and I don't mean it. I mean it in a positive way. The first one is far less character driven.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just different movie, but part of it, me personally, I think that's part of the appeal of the first one and something that makes it kind of cool and special and interesting and simple. But then the second one is far more character driven, and that's part of what makes it attractive to me as well. You know what I mean? Like they're
Yeah.
opposites in the way they approach characters, and that's for each respective movie. I think it's one of their strengths, which is seems interesting to me. Because I mean I said it so much last week. The first movie it's just pure and simple and not overdone. Like we don't have to get into too many like
Mhm.
love stories and things like there's not. I mean we're focused on what it is, and I respect that, and I think that's fun and interesting. And then this one we're like, all right, we're gonna branch out a little bit. We're gonna have a little more depth to our story. And it's like, well, that was really good, and it has to be well done. But it was,
Yeah.
but it. So that's interesting to me.
Yeah, they're in opposition of each other, but they're also in conversation with each other, and like they build on each other. It's a perfect sequel. It's the
Yeah.
perfect 1-2 punch. I think the themes of it still carries, again, those same themes of the first movie, but it also carries more over with, again, not to repeat myself, but second chances is something that James Cameron as a filmmaker seems to be obsessed with thematically. You look at his movies and it's very much there. Redemption is there, and facing your fear. Like Ellen Ripley's greatest fear is facing this beast again, but she will go to hell and back for this little girl. And so by the time that you get to the end of this movie, when she says, "Get away from her, you bitch," like you're like, yes, like it
Yeah.
just it's awesome. And just sitting down and watching this with Carly yesterday, when like Ellen loads up the guns and she like goes down, like Carly was like, "I would fuck up an alien if they mess with Zoe," and I'm like, "You're damn right you would." Like it's just it gets the blood pumping, you know? Like it's just
Mm.
it's one of those movies that it works, but it works so well also because of how great the first one is. You know, so they both are just incredible movies, and we've gone on about how good of a 1-2 punch it is, but you know, it's so funny that you had this movie 1 point below uh Alien, because the Rotten Tomato score for this is 1 point higher.
That's fine.
It's
Yeah.
94% currently, with the
Okay.
consensus being while Alien has a marvel of, or was a marvel of slow building and atmospheric tension, Aliens packs a much more visceral punch and features typically strong performance from Sigourney Weaver. Yeah, I agree with the score. 94. I would probably have it around 95, 96, maybe a little higher, like 95, 96.
Yeah, I ended up. I mean, I last week rated Alien at 89, and I have Aliens at 88. So I mean, very high. I mean, all these numbers are high numbers and elite numbers. So yeah, I mean, I think 94 is definitely a fair score. And I honestly think I'm a little lower on the general film buff on this movie, I mean, I love the movie, but I think I admittedly don't love this quite as much as I know a lot of people, or maybe it deserves to be.
Well, you're not necessarily a huge sci-fi guy, are you? Like you
I know,
like
but I like the elite stuff. I mean, and
yeah.
I yeah, no, it's not my favorite. But I mean, I love 2001. I love Star Wars. I love if that's and I'm enjoying Aliens. And again, 89, 88. That, I mean, that is a good score. I
It's
mean,
high. Yeah.
it's not. It's just I think it might be more of an entertainment value thing for me. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Who knows when we're rating these things, how we're doing it. My system is pretty uh fragile.
Mine is too. It's constantly ever changing and ever evolving.
Yeah, I mean,
My
normally
top five is
whenever I'm watching
my
a movie, I'll
my
just randomly like a couple minutes into it, a couple maybe at the end of Act One or something. I'll find like where's this like falling for me? Like what world is this a 90s, an 80s, a seven, something like that. If it's a 70s, all right, is it a high 70s, a low 70s? And then I'll start to kind of like during Act Two pinpoint a number, and then for the rest of the movie, it can go up and down. It's kind of like on a track at that point where like if I like what's happening, it'll keep going up, keep going up. If I don't like what's happening, it'll go down. And then obviously if something amazing or something egregious happens, it'll be like, all right, 10-point deduction or something like that. But that's normally how it rides.
you you seem to be a little bit more analytical than me in that sense, because I am straight up, I go by the heart, like it
Yeah,
is. I go by the heart, um and I don't really think about it much while I'm watching it, and then it's afterward I'm like, okay, well this and this, I like this, I don't like that, but I like this. It's all by
yeah.
feel, which is why my rankings are always doing this number,
Yeah,
always
well, it's
shifting and
it's funny you say that. I mean, I feel the same way, and I actually huge news on the movie front. I actually quit rating movies like this week. I've been rating every movie I've watched for the last like 2 years and putting it on Letterbox because I've enjoyed it and I like having I mean I like numbers, I like stats, I like graphs, I like looking back on like rankings and things like that, and I like rating stuff. But similar to like before we pulled back on this show, when we were doing it heavily, several things a week, it I was like, why am I like at one point I was like, oh yeah, I gotta fucking rate Alien 3, and then it was like, you know what, I don't want to. You know what I mean? And then like another thing that happens, like I don't care. I don't want to. I mean, I'll think of a number like when we're talking about the show, but I don't want to like. I don't need to.
What?
I don't need to put a number on Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, Alien Resurrection, Alien Prometheus, Alien Covenant, Alien versus Predator 1, Alien versus Predator 2, Predator 1, Predator 2. I don't need all that. I don't. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's making me think about it too analytically and not just enjoying the flick. I mean, like another good example kind of this was my wife and I were just sitting on the living room one night, and it was one of those like, are we gonna watch something? Or are we not? And we just something ended on TV, and Bad Teacher started right afterwards, right, with Cameron Diaz.
Cameron
And
Diaz, yeah, that's a good.
and we
That's a
just
funny
watched it.
movie.
She had a great. I'd seen it. I've seen it several times. She'd never seen it, we weren't like deciding to watch it. We just kind of got sucked into it, and she was having a great time watching it, thinking it was funny. That made me happy. I was glad she was enjoying it. I was enjoying it a fair amount. And it's like, what am I going to rate that? You know, like the end of it, it's like I'm not going to rate it. Like that, that's impossible to rate that. You know, I mean, I had a good time. She enjoyed it. I had fun watching it with her. It was funny. I'm not going to get down to the fucking script and the screenplay of it. You know what I mean? Who cares? I mean, it just, and like that was like, all right, I'm not going to do that one. And then, you know, we talked about these two movies, and then I watched Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection. It's like, man, I don't know, man. Like I know these movies aren't very good, but I don't like. I'm just not going to do it anymore. So I quit, and it's making me happier. I'm watching
Be
Prometheus,
honest.
and I'm just
Is it
having a good time.
because Alien 3 was so bad it made you go, "Why am I doing this?" It made you question things because it made me do that. I was like 11 when I watched it, so
Um, yeah, maybe. I mean, it was hard to. I mean, it did feel like a waste of time for me to think analytically about it when it was like, you know what? If I'm gonna not hate this movie or Resurrection, I actually don't even know which one of those I liked worse or better. But it was like you know, I mean, if I want to find any enjoyment in it, it's not going to be analytically. I mean, I'm just going to watch it and just turn my brain off
yeah,
and
it's
be like, oh, there's an underwater scene that's pretty cool. Oh, I mean,
that
I still, I
underwater
mean,
scene in Resurrection's sick. I'm not gonna lie. That scene is pretty awesome.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's plenty of. I mean, there's a couple things in it that are fun, and then there's some stuff that's so damn dumb that it's like kind of funny, fun. You know, whatever. I'm sorry I got us off on
Yes,
this long
you
tangent,
hate
but it.
rating movies.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, if you'd have asked me a week ago, it would have been one of my favorite things in the world. I love movies. I love numbers. I love rankings. I love ratings. I love like referencing them back. I just it's just becoming a bit of work for me, and it's just kind of taking away from the art that is film for me. So that I'm just putting it down.
I honestly I get that and I respect it. I do. I get it and I respect it, and I'm kind of at that same point. So, but let's get into some fun facts here, man. Like most films, this wasn't shot in sequence, but for added realism, James Cameron filmed the scene where we first met the Colonial Marines, one of the earliest scenes in the movies, last. This was so that the camaraderie of the Marines was realistic because the actors had spent months filming together, and I think that's a nice little detail.
Yeah, that's a James Cameron move. It feels like.
Very much so. When filming the scene with Newt and the duct, Carrie Henn kept deliberately blowing her scene so she could slide down the vent, which she later called a slide 3 stories tall. James Cameron finally dissuaded her by saying that if she completed the shot, she could play on it as much as she wanted. She did, and he kept his promise.
That's funny, but that would be fun.
That's pretty cool. James Cameron has a couple. I listened to the commentary track on this.
Yeah.
I did it a few months ago, not even for this. I did that when the 4K releases came out, and I got Aliens, and I listened to his commentary track, and there's a lot of little fun facts like that in there,
Huh.
where Carrie Henn would say a couple things, and he thought that they were cute and funny, and pretty cool stuff. Bill Paxton continuously apologized to Carrie Henn throughout filming every time Hudson had to swear in front of her. Carrie later admitted she didn't mind, mainly because she didn't really know what any of the words meant.
Yeah, that's funny. Oh,
Great Bill Paxton, man. Game over, man. Game over. Such a He has so many lines in this that are
yeah.
fantastic.
My favorite line of his is wait, was it his when he was like, "Yeah, but it's a dry heat, man." That's
Yeah.
the best one. Oh, it kind of reminds me.
Hudson.
I know we just finished trashing this movie, but I'm not a big Ron Perlman guy. Maybe that's blasphemy. Maybe people love him. I'm not sure, but I'm not I typically don't enjoy his characters that much. He's obviously got like kind of a thing that he does, but in Resurrection, um, it's a real similar line where he Winona Ryder's like, "What did you put in your battery acid?" And he's like, "Yeah, for color." And I thought that was so funny. Sorry.
God, I haven't seen that movie in so long. I forget a lot of the lines from it. The knife trick scene was originally going to be done by Bishop alone. According to Lance Henriksen, he suggested that James Cameron have to have Hudson's hand put on top of his, to which Cameron agreed, as Henriksen felt the scene needed something extra. This change was discussed with almost everyone except Bill Paxton. Henriksen also remembers a long night of drinking after shooting this scene, followed by a reshoot of the scene, as it looked too fake when they sped the footage up. He accidentally caught Paxton's pinky with a knife on the reshoot. One of the coolest scenes in the movie, and it's
Yeah,
also
it's anxiety.
one of the funniest scenes in Ted. he just he does it, tries to redo it.
Yeah.
He's like, "I'm a bear. What do you expect?"
God. God, is this the only movie that's in? Is that in like Lethal Weapon or something? I don't know why I thought that was in something else.
No, it's in this. Lethal Weapon's the straight jacket.
Yeah, that was like one of my favorite scenes.
He
Yeah,
pops his
yeah.
arm out of the.
I
Yeah,
just I remember like doing this a lot when I was a kid, like wanting to be good at. I guess okay, they sped the footage up. I was like, I mean, it looks intense.
yeah. I couldn't. I can't imagine actually letting someone do that to my own hand. No, thank you. Don't trust anyone that much. Uh, Sigourney Weaver's Best Actress Academy Award nomination for this movie was the first ever for an actress in a role in a science fiction action film. Although Jane Alexander had previously been nominated for Best Actress for her role in the apocalyptic drama Testament, and Melinda Dillon was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for her role in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Um, I kind of want to relitigate this a little bit. Best Actress for the year 1986. The award was given in 1987. Marlee Matlin won for Children of a Lesser God. Jane Fonda was nominated for The Morning After. Sissy Spacek was nominated for Crimes of the Heart. Kellen Turner was nominated for Peggy Sue Got Married. Sigourney Weaver should have won.
Who won?
Marlee Matlin,
For what?
Children of a Lesser God.
I don't know if I've heard of any of those movies. I don't know if I've even heard of any of them.
I've seen Crimes of the Heart and Children of a Lesser God. Sigourney Weaver should have won. We always do that. Like Oscars, oftentimes it's all about the hype, and then years later, when like the momentum slows down and we kind of relitigate the Oscars of who should have won versus what won, it's very rare that we get it right. I say we as if,
Sure,
we're
we're
the
the
Academy.
Academy.
We're not. Yeah, we're not. And also, as much as I love Oscar season, and you and I have talked about this. We love Oscar season, but it is a bit ridiculous to give something as subjective as film best of. It's subjective.
Yeah,
You can't definitively say who's the best, but looking back on it, I think the Oscars should represent like what in years later is going to be the most iconic. And it's hard to say, right? But Sigourney Weaver's performance in this, she does so many things without saying anything. It's all here, all through the eyes. She lets you peer into her soul. And she just has these big windows right up here that just lets you right in, and it's a rare trait that not a lot of actors have. She has it. She's an incredible performer, and this performance is fantastic. I mean, the movie, I won't say she carries the movie, but like she's given a lot, and she steps it to the plate and hits a grand slam home run.
Yeah, I just googled Sigourney Weaver Oscar just because I was trying to see who won that year before you told me. And one of the first results is a Reddit thread saying, "Did you think Sigourney Weaver's performance in Alien 3 was worthy of an Oscar nomination?" And I guess I didn't mean to comment on her performance, but just the sentence sounds funny. And then it's a very serious Reddit thread about it, and it's like, and I guess she was good in all four of them, but it just seems
She is
crazy
really good in all four.
and then she says, it says, one person says, well, it's the best performance in the entire Alien franchise and the best performance of her career, so yes.
It's a hot take. It's a scorching hot take. Coming off the top rope with a swanton bomb of a take.
It's tough to focus on performances in a movie like that.
Yeah. It really is, especially one that's hijacked by a studio and its own director doesn't even want to acknowledge it exists.
Yeah.
But
it is funny. Sorry, I know we've brought this whole thing up, but it's an Alien franchise month. It is funny from a distance. Like I hadn't seen Alien 3 in a long time, and I thought, I'm sure I knew it was bad, but just to see, oh, Ridley Scott and James Cameron, oh, David Fincher did the third one. God, like it's like this thing's just loaded with great directors, and then obviously,
yeah,
that's not the way the cookie crumbled.
What happened. Look, there's a lot of people that love Alien 3, so I'm not trying to. When I crap on it, I'm not trying to take away your enjoyment. Love it as much as you want, but it's kind of one of those movies that has been reappreciated over the years. But it's not for me. Just not for me. And I don't think it's for you either. I don't want to speak for you, but it seems like it wasn't for you.
No, yeah, I didn't think it was very good. I don't think I hate it as much as you. It was somewhere in like that 50 world. I mean, with the first 8 minutes of it, just the setup for the story, the way it looked was horrible. I mean, the exterior shots on that planet and the shots of like the thing crashing. Also, when it happened, when they crashed, it was like, well, they're all dead. And then they were all dead except Sigourney Weaver, who seemed to be just fine. I mean, and they, at least for the other people, they were seriously dead and mutilated because like they just crashed from the. I mean, I don't even know what they were. If you drove off a Brooklyn Bridge into the water in your car, you'd be dead probably. And they did it from the fucking space.
Yeah. God, I did. It's so bad.
The Hicks and the nude thing were
just awful decision from the jump. And there's no cut that David Fincher could put together that would make up for that decision.
Yeah. And that whole shtick with like the all male prison, and they were all like, we're all rapists and murderers, and it's like that I don't know, kind of like a Waterworld, like just I don't know, it just was kind of a played out shtick that's not that interesting.
It tries to recreate the vibe of Alien without actually doing what this did, which is building on top of Alien, and then you get something that builds on top of Aliens. It regresses.
Yeah, and then the dog alien was already.
Well, they in the assembly cut, it's like a mule or something. I forget.
What's the assembly cut? Is that the special edition?
It's not David Fincher's version, but it's like what he was working with, and it's a bunch of added scenes that add context to a lot of it.
Yeah, sorry,
but no, you're fine. Sigourney Weaver, though, going back to her, she had several notes for James Cameron after reading the script. Although he could not grant all of her requests. In fact, he granted none of her requests, I don't think. Cameron praised her for never taking issue with the direction he wanted to take the story. Her notes are all about how she felt Ripley should respond to her situations, which he was happy to accommodate. Do you know the things that she requested?
No.
She wanted no guns. So clearly, this movie didn't do that. She wanted to die, which also this movie didn't do. And the most bizarre thing is she wanted to have sex with the xenomorph. She kind of did. She
I
kind
know
of does all three.
I know there's
Eventually,
some you touched on the sexual assault like innuendos throughout the this franchise has a
the
lot of
phallic and yonic imagery.
this
Phallic and
franchise
yonic
has a
imagery.
lot
Yeah.
of sex and reproductive undertones. I mean, I'm watching Prometheus right now and just watched the machine perform a cesarean section. The whole
Like an
thing
abortion
is
sequence.
it's so. I mean, it was subtle, more subtle in the original, I guess, kind of, but it starts to get a little heavy handed. I think
It gets very heavy handed the more it goes along, for sure. But a lot of phallic, yonic imagery in these movies, and to all three of these requests that she wanted to do, eventually she gets that. There's no guns in Alien 3. I don't remember, but the newborn, does she have sex with an alien in Alien
she
Resurrection?
gets sucked into one, and out comes
Okay, so
a
it's implied.
Caucasian alien that walks on 2 feet and has like teeth and eyes, or
Yeah, yeah.
more normal teeth and eye.
D-
It looks
Disturbing
like
looking.
it
Yeah,
looks disgusting.
yeah.
That whole thing,
But
God.
yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time.
Gets
So
sucked out the
even
window. Ripley's crying.
even as a 10-year-old, I was like, "This ain't it, Chief." But yeah, she eventually does all three. She dies in Alien 3. So like she gets her wish. She got her wish.
Yeah.
The alien nest set in this was intact after filming it. It was later used as the Axis chemical set in Batman '89. If you recognize that, when
What
Batman
does
and
that
Chloe
mean?
first entered the
Excess
set,
chemical? Excess chemicals? What is that? Do you remember what that?
so it's like the Ace chemical plant and the Batman '89 when he drives through. Batman does and is blowing up everything and using guns to blow up everything. This was it looks the sets look very similar. Obviously, this was made and came out before Batman '89, but very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Um, According to Bill Paxton, he improvised many of the lines, including "Game over, man, game over." His famous line, "We're on an excess elevator to hell, going down," was probably improvised as well, as it didn't appear in its shooting script. He would add little details like this to all his characters, and I think that's why Bill Paxton and James Cameron always worked together. James Cameron liked working with him. He always likes working with the same actors, but uh, that is, I think, one of the main reasons why. Because Bill Paxton would like take his characters and like always give them a little bit of backstory, which is why they always have such personality. He was such a great performer and such a really underrated character actor.
Yeah, I mean, he showed up for this one, especially. This was probably his most standoutish one to me. I'm trying to. I mean, I've been watching Twister so many times recently. Twister's so.
Twister and then True Lies.
Mhm.
I'm nothing. I'm Naval yeah, it's not, again, another James Cameron movie, but he's so good in that. The full size Queen puppet was actually too big to fit into the elevator. For the shot where she is seen, her tail was removed, and yet the back of the elevator still had to be opened to accommodate the prop, smoke effects, dark lighting, and black curtain at the back to obscure this. Also, it's still to this day the largest puppet for a movie ever created, and it looks stunning.
Yeah, I mean, it does look good, and you get a better look at it in this one than you do in the first one. In turn, like the first one's so like flashy and dark. It's so hard to.
It's hard to tell and see what it is.
Yeah, it just leaves you like unsatisfied almost. Like you're just like, God, you're like focusing on it, then it goes away, and you're just trying. Your eyes can't work.
Yeah, which it lends itself to the horror
Sure.
of it all.
Sure.
But with this, it's so big and grotesque, and also simultaneously beautiful, which is very something. It stays with this franchise. Like it's simultaneously beautiful looking, but also simultaneously like gross.
Yeah.
A lot of grossness. And the last fun fact we'll get to, which isn't necessarily fun, but I would highly recommend checking out the documentary on this movie. And also, I think there's that docu-series on Netflix called The Movies That Made Us, and Aliens is one of those movies that's on there, that's featured on there. And they go into the production of this movie, and it was not easy. It was not easy. There was a lot of animosity on the set between the predominantly British crew and both James Cameron and producer Gillian Hurd, neither of whom had experience working in British studios. In crew's eyes, Cameron was still relatively an untired as a director, as The Terminator had been a box office flop in the UK when released in January of 1985, which many of the crew members hadn't seen. He actually, at one point, like scheduled like a screening of The Terminator, and no one showed up to kind of show them, hey, like I've directed a movie before, and none of them showed up. They allegedly mocked Hurd by suggesting she was only got to be producer because she was married to Cameron at the time, and they allegedly wouldn't take orders from a woman. The crew saw Cameron and Hurd as inexperienced, overly demanding, and arrogant, and in turn, Cameron and Hurd saw the crew as lazy, in part due to their incessant tea breaks. Incessant and arrogant. One of their few allies in production was production designer Peter Lamont. After a long and difficult shoot, Cameron addressed the crew by saying that one thing kept him going through it all: the certain knowledge that one day I would drive off Pinewood and never come back, and that you sorry bastards would still be here. Cameron indeed never came back to Pinewood Studio, but he later hired Lamont as production designer on True Lies, and even got him to come out of retirement for Titanic. Regardless of Cameron's personal feelings about it, Pinewood continued to be a preferred studio facility for many American directors. If you guys want to know more about this, I highly recommend checking out those things I just mentioned. It is really fascinating to dive into the production of this movie, and to see that this movie is as great as it is, despite the behind the scenes issues. It just goes to show you just how difficult it is to make a good movie. That's why, like, I don't celebrate it when a movie's bad. I don't like to dunk on a movie when it's bad. It's just like, it's bad. It's bad. I don't want to talk about it a whole lot. I just want to celebrate the good ones, because it is a Herculean effort to make a movie good.
It's unbelievable that it ever happens.
Yeah. Never. Very, very rare. But let's move on to the award section, guys. We're going to start off with the best scenes and moments, and there's quite a lot here. Usually I try to keep it down to 15, but when you're dealing with a movie like this, it's very hard. Or I try to keep it down to 10, not 15. I try to keep it down to 10. But I have 15. Ripley's Nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great little callback, and it also means like, oh yeah, we're back at it. You know, I mean, I imagine seeing it in theaters for the first time was like, oh yeah, we're in there.
The xenomorph coming out.
Yeah.
Ugh. hook it through the stomach. It's a really good practical effect.
Oh yeah, with their skin stretching and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Because the first one, the shirt was down.
Yeah,
Right.
the shirt was down, so you didn't see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, Ripley finds out what happened to her daughter. Again, this is something that you see not in the theatrical, but in the special edition. That was the original intent of James Cameron. Um, Again, it adds a layer to this character, and it adds some emotional stakes to her connection with Newt and on the character journey that she would go on to have in this film. I think it adds a lot to it emotionally and thematically.
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen the not special edition, so I didn't realize that was a difference. But that seems it's a powerful scene on its own, but it's obviously a big it's exposition or it's foreshadowing. I mean, it helps with the remainder of the movie as well.
No, completely agree. Um, Introduction of the Colonial Marines, the knife trick slash finding out Bishop is a synthetic. The Marines here are great, man. It's just the back and forth, the Marine talk. It's nice. I love the shot of the pods. The fact that they only made like 3 or 4 of these things, and they put a mirror behind it, so it looks like there's a row of these things. It's really really cool how they did that because this movie had like a $10 to $15 million budget,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but they were still able to make it look good using tricks like that. Of course, we mentioned the knife trick, but again, the synthetic, it plays into this movie subverting expectations in a way that feels still authentic to the series, where you have this synthetic. And in the last movie, the synthetic was like the bad guy, and in this one, it turns out he's actually a good person.
Yeah, I like his character a lot. He's
Yeah, I
he's
do too.
he's he makes you feel good. Something about him. He
Yeah,
makes you feel safe.
yeah. He it's his voice. Something about his voice is very comforting and calming.
Mm-hmm.
um, Ripley and Newt officially meet.
Yeah.
It's just very sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. And when all the other assholes around her are being like, "What are you? No help to me, you idiot!" I mean, talk to her like she's 8 years old, not some military resource for you.
Yeah, and it's just the sweetness of her like taking care of her, and then like the harshness of her being like, "Everyone's dead, okay? Is that what you want to hear?" And then her being like, "It's okay. You're safer here with us." Just the nurturing nature that Ripley has. Um, it's really sweet to see. Marines infiltrate the alien base and get ambushed. I love the the sound design of the sensor. It's like a heartbeat. The do 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 do. It
Dude,
gets like the closer they get, it goes like a heartbeat. It's a really nice design. Just how these Marines just straight up get sacked. These tough Marines just get straight up beasted by these
yeah.
aliens, and they just
I
crumble.
I mentioned it in the first one too. The design of like the tracking, especially in this one, where you can't see it, but things are there, is terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Very intense.
Yeah, very very intense. It works very very well. Them driving off to that whole sequence, Ripley taking over because the guy in charge of this is clearly was hired for this specific reason that uh, the main villain could actually take advantage of him. I'm forgetting the main villain's name all of a sudden. I don't know why I'm forgetting it, but
Yeah, I can't. I don't know.
um,
Alien.
but yeah. No, God, that's gonna kill me. Hold on. Let's see here. I have the IMDb page pulled up. Why am I not using it? Here. It's played by a very famous actor who I'm also blanking on the name. But that happens from time to time.
Oh
Let's
yeah.
see.
Oh yeah. Bukes or
Burke.
okay. Yeah.
Burke. That's it. It's Burke. Um
He was a good
Played
villain. I mean,
by
I kind of bought into him at the beginning.
Paul Reiser.
Yeah.
Played by Paul Reiser. Yeah. Oh, if this was our trivia competition, I would have lost us the game walker.
That's funny.
Game over, man. Game over. I've already quoted that 3 times now. I'll stop. I've met my quota.
That's funny.
They mostly come out at night. Mostly. I always think of South Park. They mostly come out at night.
Mostly.
Um, Mostly. Ripley confronts Newt before, or not confronts, but comforts Newt as she goes to sleep. It's just really sweet. The Ripley, she doesn't have nightmares because she's a piece of plastic. Like,
Yeah.
so matter of fact. Um, it's just it's really sweet. Her saying, I'll watch over you. It's gonna be okay. You know, the my mom's used to say there's not monsters in the world, but there are. It's just it's so back and forth. The quotes are there. It's just really sweet. Um, Century gun sequence. I think this was added. Um, just shows you how many of these bastards there are.
Yeah. 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 When they the gun. I mean, yeah. So did Ripley or did Sigourney want no guns in the movie, or just her character not to use guns?
She wanted no guns in the movie.
Mm.
She's very anti-gun. But
Oh, the
the
actress is.
Marines,
Yeah. I mean,
yes, Sigourney
the
Weaver
guns are
is.
sick in this movie.
The sound design of these guns, have guns ever sounded cooler?
No. No.
Like the
No.
I can't even do it. It's just it's so cool. They released like a Nerf gun of this back in the day, and I was like this close to getting it. I'm not even like I don't like have like Nerf guns or anything like that, but like I was about to get that one. I was real close. And it's such a cool design, and it's such it sounds so cool. Um, but yeah, she's highly anti-gun, Sigourney Weaver, and she didn't want any, but it works for the movie. Um, Ripley and Newt trapped with the face huggers. This is just again, she goes in there because she notices that Newt is underneath the bed, scared. She goes under there, cuddles her. She's been asleep, and then she sees that like the gun's been taken out of there, the doors are locked, and she notices the things have been opened, and
So
they've been trapped
intense.
in there. It's so intense. It gets so close to wrapping on her face. Nice little detail. They show her smoking beforehand, which is why she has the lighter on her and she's able to light it. It makes sense. It's a little
Yeah,
it paid a little attention to detail. It adds to it.
I agree.
It's, um, aliens ambush. Just the last like half act of this movie just rolls. You have aliens ambush the crew. Uh, so sick. They go through Bill Paxton eventually gets taken down. The hand on the face and him getting dragged down is what gets me. Like it's just like
Yeah,
this is crazy. You get them in the vents, uh, and the whole sacrificing themselves explosion. The head of the mission kind of getting some getting the redemption that he needed, which is a theme of this movie. They get out with Newt. It's just Newt and Hicks and Ripley, and then Newt um, falls behind, falls down that shaft, and then you get that shot of the alien coming up out of the water, which is the next scene I have listed here. That shot is so sick that just alien
The
come out of
jump
the
up.
water. So
It's like Kobe or
yeah,
something. I don't know how he can. You ever try
so
to
so
jump out of the
crazy.
water at the shallow end of a pool?
Oh yeah,
It's like,
it's hard to do. Um, Ripley goes to save Newt slash the reveal of the Queen and the evac. All intense. I talked about the symbolic nature of this sequence of her going into her own personal hell, like literally descending into hell and going into the belly of the beast to get this girl to face her fears, to give her, that second chance of getting to redeem it in a way, a second chance of being a mom, getting to redeem that, but also, facing her fear, um, and getting some vengeance on these aliens that ruined her life. Like it is very symbolic and just again, no dialogue in the sequence, but you see the alien queen calling off the xenomorphs, and then the little face hugger opens up, and it's like, okay, bitch, you want to do this? Let's do it.
yeah.
And it's so sick. You get the evac, you get that awesome score that was used in a lot of trailers back in the day. Um, and then you finally get Ripley versus the Alien Queen. Like it's just one scene after another, man. This last half is just it slaps so hard. It's so awesome. As Deadpool say, the Honda Odyssey slaps or fucks hard. Yeah,
Yeah.
this whole last sequence does. Like it, like get away from her, you
Or you-
bitch, and then
yeah,
it's
I was
so
looking forward to
great.
that scene. I've heard you quote that so many times, and I was just looking forward to it the whole time.
Yeah, it's so awesome. And then the sweet shot of Ripley looking on at Newt as she sleeps when they're sleeping in the pod. And that to me is where the franchise ends.
Yeah.
Ended that on a happy note. Um, in my eyes, anyway.
Newt was not mangled and crashed into a all male prison.
God. But yeah, I just the whole last like I'm gonna cheat here, like I do with
Mm-hmm.
like when people ask me what my favorite movie is
Yeah.
like, what's your favorite movie? Star Wars, all nine. It's like a gigantic cheat. Shouldn't even count as one movie. This is it. It's as soon as they get trapped by the face huggers from scene 10 that I have here all the way to 15, like this entire last half, freaking, you turn it on. I'm not turning it off. I'm not turning it off. I'm not moving away. I'm not doing anything else except watching this.
I agree. I mean, I said when I'm rating movies back when I used to do that, I'd find a place like a reasonable world, then I'd find kind of a little more specific of a score, then I'd write it. About that time, about the face hugger sequence, it started doing an uptick because it was. I mean, I knew at that point I was in the 80s, and I was like, I'm going kind of mid, I'm going 85, and then it just kind of do 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 do, and it just kept going up and up, and I was like, okay, the
Mm-hmm.
end of this movie is so sick. So I
Yeah.
definitely agree with you. I think I'm gonna just, the alien ambushing the crew was intense, scary, dramatic. I mean, it was we see what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, and the
At the same,
ramifications of using the guns too, of like close quarters and
oh, the
people getting
acid
like
blood, they
acid
use that
thrown. Yeah.
way more than the first one because when they talk about that acid blood, I said that last week. That's a big deal, and it's a little underutilized in the first one. It's a problem.
Yeah, that's a gigantic problem. And unfortunately it happens to a lot of people, including Hicks, who survives the movie. It's nice that Michael Bean survives this movie. I think this is
Just
the
not,
only
not the trip home though.
movie. Well, okay, let's forget that happened. God, it's just you keep ruining my life here, man. Stop it.
I think the actor's pissed about it too. I read a little bit. The actor was
Yeah,
like,
he
"That's
was
bullshit."
he made them pay a lot of money to use his likeness, and then he later regretted it, saying it was David Fincher and he would have done anything for David Fincher. But I mean, David Fincher even doesn't like his Alien 3. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, mine is a cheat. You picked one. You did it the right way. Worst scenes and
Integrity of the
moments.
pod.
I have no notes here. I think this movie's pretty damn close to perfect. And then 2, Alien 3 doesn't exist in my head. Was what I wrote down.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I mean, I mentioned earlier that I used one thing I didn't enjoy as much about it that I kind of that made me decide to go a point lower. And I think you're probably gonna hate what I say. A little bit of like the Marine camaraderie, like the characters there. I don't. What's her name? The woman with the short hair who sacrifices herself with the explosion.
That would be.
I mean, I'm sure it's Ruiz or Gonzalez
Vasquez.
or something.
It's Vasquez.
Yeah, it's just like a like those that I don't know. I just It just felt a little. As a group, they felt a little they feel cheesy a little to me, like a little of that, like that whole. We said it earlier about like we filmed this scene last to make the Bond feel more authentic, but that whole like shtick that every movie has done, where it's like someone comes in, hey, this alien's gonna kill you and your entire family if you're not careful. It's like hope I'm in some kind of stupid fucking joke, like that whole like thing. That always makes me like ugh, and that was the only, and that's a little nitpicky. So like that was the difference between the first and the second one for me. That was what I used to not my point. I did enjoy Paxton though, just because he was he was original and interesting. But the rest of them just felt very sticky.
We can't all be perfect, Walker, and in that opinion, you're not. But it's okay, No, yeah, I do not agree with what you're saying, but fair critique. It's very well trodden ground at this point. Yeah. That kind of cliche. So I get it. Best performance, Sigourney Weaver.
Gotta be.
Yeah.
Gotta be.
Does this make sense? What are the chances of Ripley's spacecraft would get found? Like, it's very... They kind of acknowledge it in the movie. It's kind of a miracle.
Yeah.
So they kind of address it head on. It's a miracle. It's not likely. It's 1 in a million, 1 in a billion, 1 in a trillion, whatever. I buy it. They do mention it in the movie. Have they, this is xenomorph. So have they run into aliens before? I don't think that they have, given that how like surprised they are when they get there and the description of these creatures and everything like that. I think that's just the name of something that's like extraterrestrial that they don't know. I'm sure that the actual answer is something a little bit more different than that. I'm sure if someone would write that in the comment section, I would be very appreciative. I know Walker would be too.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, let us know. No. You're like, no, fuck that. I wouldn't. No, but I certainly would. If you want to write that in the comment section, let us know. How did the alien queen know how to press the elevator button?
That scene was pretty funny. That I don't know if there was supposed to be any sort of like laughter at that part, or if I know it's at a pretty serious moment. I chuckled to myself when the alien rode up the elevator. It's like, oh shit, they're coming up.
Well, I think it's so. I buy it in the sense that I think they are very intelligent creatures.
I do too. I agree. I do too.
They show
it was still just silly kind of. It was just funny, like in a good way. It just was like it made me laugh a little. But I do. I sure they're intelligent, obviously, and they could probably figure it out.
They could probably figure that out.
I mean, it's better than the first one. Whenever what did Ridley Scott wanted to add them mimicking a voice home to like pretending to be Captain Dallas with didn't Ridley want
with the voice?
Yeah, not that intelligent.
No, but I buy it. So there's not really anything here that I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah, I will say when I was watching it, one thing that was highly coincidental for me was Ripley's been floating around for 57 years. She gets brought in. She says, "Go look at that planet for yourself." And he's like, "We've had people there for 20 years. It doesn't even matter." And then, like the next day, an alien, like they.
I think it's because, as they mention, Burke was hearing all these transcriptions about it, and they could kind of pinpoint where it was, and they sent that truck there.
Makes a lot more sense. I missed that, but that does make a lot more sense because I was also gonna mention for Burke, like that was an interesting performance because I guess he wasn't always evil, because at the beginning when I was like he kind of fooled me on like his nice guy shtick, I it would have made sense because he wasn't evil yet because the opportunity wasn't there yet, but
Yeah.
I guess it had because if he is hearing that and then he you know shifted focus to go find something. Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Given that it's still playing into that whole corporate greed aspect. Again, carrying over the themes from the first movie. So I don't really have anything here. This kind of it kind of skips over worse scenes at moments and does this make sense, which is a common thing from
for good movies.
Jimmy C. Yeah,
sure.
and good movies. MVP is Jimmy C.
Yeah, I mean he's great again. Yeah, it's an excellent.
Doesn't miss.
No,
he doesn't. I don't think he knows how to make a bad movie. He just doesn't. He knows how to only make good.
It doesn't
things.
even need. He takes movies like this too. That if I'm being honest, he doesn't need to be as detailed as he is. It's not absolutely necessary. This movie would still be a financial success without it, probably. Or I don't know if it was a financial success. I assume so, but
it was.
It doesn't need that, but the reason it does, and the fact that he does put that much detail into his work leads me into my next of why I would recommend this movie. It's not just your everyday sci-fi alien flick. This is a well thought out, has layers to the character, has layers to the plot, much bigger of a story, bigger of a scope of everything than the original Alien, but still complements it very well. Believable, continuing on in the same universe, makes it a 1-2 punch that's iconic, all-time classic, must see. And we've talked about it the whole episode now, and an hour and a half listeners' time and 3.5 hours our time. It that this movie's just excellent. I mean, it's a great 1-2 punch. It's absolutely in part thanks to two iconic directors. It's just must see. Got to do it.
Couldn't have said it better myself, my friend.
Well, is that all we got this week?
Yeah, after 24 hours of recording,
we've had some technical difficulties if no one's picking up what we're putting down.
Yeah. We will edit this episode to something palatable for you guys, though. Yeah, I'm all tapped out.
Well, thank you everybody for listening. If you're hearing this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, thanks for watching. If you're catching us on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and let us know down below in the comments what you thought of Aliens. What did you think of Alien? Which one do you rank higher? Or do you rank Alien versus Predator Requiem higher than both of these? Just let us know. But for now, this has been Ben and Walker, and we'll see you next time.
Game over, man!